So very good afternoon to ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Future Mobility Summit 2021 Session 3 on Lean Mobility. The theme is the mobility as a service, and the entire session is divided into two parts. We have in first part the interaction with the industry doyen and of course the government leadership, and the second part is panel discussion with the mobility providers comprising of 5 important segments of the mobility as a service, starting with the commercial and public product transportation product. Ashok Leland, Vice President, Mr. Karthik Ganesh, micro mobility provider Yulu, co-founder Yulu, Mr. Amit, and of course to do the aggregation we have Smarty, Mr. Goldie Srivastava, who will be joining us very soon, and of course Pawan Vash, Uber as a shared mobility provider is there. Hi, and MasterCard representation is from MasterCard India South Asia, Mr. R.B. Santosh Kumar. And in the session, which will be represented by these 5 stalwarts, the moderation will be done by experienced journalist Mr. Sumanto Borua from Autocar Professional. And this session is chaired by none other than the well-known face of the industry, our industry doyen, Dr. Pawan Goenka, Managing Director, Mahindra & Mahindra. He will not only chair the session, but also he will be giving the perspective on what lies ahead in the future mobility as a service. And also the government side perspective will be given by our very respected Honorable Shri Sudhendu Jyoti Sinha, who is Advisor, Infrastructure, Connectivity and Electric Mobility in Niti Aayog. And this session is a very important session as the mobility is transforming. So without much ado, I would request Dr. Pawan Goenka, the session chair, to not only set the context, but give his opening remark and speech on where the mobility is heading to. Over to you, Dr. Goenka.
Thank you, Prashant, and welcome, Mr. Sinha. Thank you for joining this session. Mobility as a service, MaaS as we call it, is one of the biggest disruptions that is happening in the dynamics of the automotive or mobility industry. But if you really think about it, what is MaaS? Frankly, it's nothing new. No matter how far back you go, we have always had mobility as a service. From the modest rickshaw puller, bicycle rickshaw, autos, taxis, buses, all of these are nothing but mobility as a service. So why so much hoopla about it? Why do we talk so much about mobility as a service now when we never talked about it, say, 2-3 years ago? And I suppose there is a significant transition that is happening in what MaaS now means. This is happening in terms of the mobility service going primarily from being unorganized to becoming much more organized, which means it's providing better efficiency, better productivity of assets that are being used for mobility, and thus creating, I would say, a win-win-win situation. Win-win-win for manufacturers, for service providers, and also for the consumers. What has also changed is the digital technology and the entrepreneurial spirit of the aggregators, as we know them, has really redefined the value proposition. And today, from consumers' perspective, you are able to get much better service, better vehicles to transport in at a lower cost. And that's what is changing in terms of quality and reliability of the service. And this is what is the experience that we have already had. All of us have used the MaaS. And that's what is making it so exciting as we look at the future on how MaaS will change, or how MaaS will change our mobility life of a. The question that we should ponder today is, what direction will this industry take? How will electric vehicles play in this MaaS market? MaaS market. How can MaaS industry integrate better with urban infrastructure, because right now the development of urban infrastructure and mobility service is kind of happening independently. What is the role of key stakeholders, automotive OEMs, suppliers, aggregators, society, and the government? Obviously, there's not enough time today to go in depth of each one of these things, but I'll quickly touch upon some of these points. So something in the very short term, where we are today, there is clearly an adverse impact that COVID-19 has had on mass mobility, because there has been a little bit of hesitation in sharing mobility with somebody else who you don't know. You don't know who sat in the vehicle before you. But I believe that this is short-lived. The value proposition of MaaS is so strong that as soon as vaccination happens, as soon as we become a little less concerned about catching the virus, the fear goes away. I think the shared mobility will come back the same way, and perhaps even come back with more momentum. Now, today, MaaS is focused primarily on urban and on passenger movement. Where we will see significant changes happening is MaaS moving to rural area and more on goods movement. The rural hasn't yet benefited from the technology explosion that has happened in this area. And I believe personally that the opportunity for MaaS to impact the mobility of rural people is even higher than what it is for urban people. And I hope the industry will start looking at rural as strongly as they've been looking at urban. Now, for goods transport also, there isn't that much that has happened compared to passenger transport. There are some players for intracity movement, such as Porter, Link, Blowhorn, Zingo, Delivery. It's catching on, but again, that's another thing where the opportunity for MaaS may be even larger than what it is for passenger movement. Now, we still need technology intervention to improve the efficiency of MaaS, so that assets get used for 20 hours and not for 12 hours. Now, let's turn our attention to electric vehicles. How will electric vehicles impact MaaS? Now, I believe that these two actually go hand in hand. There cannot be MaaS effectively without electric vehicle, and there cannot be electric vehicle without MaaS, because that's where I have said many times, I'm repeating again, that the biggest benefit of electric vehicle will be MaaS mobility, where the is getting used for 20 hours and not for 5 hours. Now, we have already seen that for three-wheelers, both for load and passenger, and for small four-wheelers, the commercial viability of electric is already there. And therefore, first and last mile connectivity, both for people and for goods, is a huge opportunity. And I will not be surprised at all that in 5 years, 50% of these vehicles that are used for mass mobility is electric, whether it's three-wheeler or a small four-wheeler. Many players have come in. Mahindra has launched a product. Recently, Piaggio has launched a product. And there are many other small players who have come in. Kinetic already has a product, and everybody else will come into this. As far as shared mobility is concerned, that is four-wheeler, I think there is still a need for reducing the prices of vehicles by 15 to 20%. And I believe that this will happen when the battery cost touches about $100 per kilowatt hour. And at that point, the four-wheelers for shared mobility will also become cost justifiable, commercially viable, and it will then take off. So while large-scale development of electric vehicles in urban centers will do good for pollution, congestion, this will call for many changes in urban infrastructure and much better alignment in city planning and MaaS. For example, we will need very large parking structures with charging infrastructure where these vehicles can park overnight and charge. Many of the people who are driving these vehicles do not have proper access to parking and charging, and therefore this infrastructure will go a long way in making this MaaS viable using electric vehicle. Also, there is a need for integration of mobility service from last mile to rapid transport, scheduling, payment gateway, automatic connection, sufficient availability around demand centers and peak hours. So if you focus on these two things in terms of urban infrastructure, I think in urban centers, the MaaS will take off much more rapidly and much more aggressively. Now, you will recall, some of you will recall that in 2018 August, Niti Aayog had organized a summit called MOVE. And at that time, our Honorable Prime Minister had talked about the 7 Cs: common, connected, convenient, congestion-free, clean, charged, and cutting edge. And if you look at each and every one of these 7 words, there is a lot of OEMs have to offer vehicles which are designed around the needs of MaaS. The need that a personal user will have and a MaaS user will have are not identical. They're similar but not identical, and we need to design vehicles that are suited for MaaS. We need to engage aggregators, innovate new business models, leasing, maintenance, TCO, battery swapping. All of these things have to come in from the OEMs to make it happen. Suppliers of electric vehicle components will have to go into localization very rapidly. As of now, India is not localized enough. A lot of the stuff that goes into electric vehicles, whether it is small 3-wheelers or large vehicles, it's all imported. And suppliers have to really put their money, investment into making this happen. Consumers and society at large also have to have a role to play. There has to be a behavioral change. There has to be a social discipline, a mindset change of ownership versus shared resources. Even transport bodies and union need to see this as a positive change and not a threat to their livelihood. The integrators obviously is the glue. They are the one who connect all the dots, and they have to really believe in electric vehicles, believe in providing the service to the consumer, maintain service quality levels, adopt fair pricing practices, adopt fair practices for drivers and ecosystem employees. And finally, of course, government. Without government, we always believe that nothing can happen. So government also has a role to play. But I have said before that government has done, frankly, enough for electric vehicles. And now it is primarily up to the OEM, the suppliers, the aggregators, the consumers to take it forward. But even so, while the incentives are well provided for, there's a need for a little bit more incentive for scrapping ICE vehicles and buying electric vehicles. There's a little bit more that needs to be done for ease of getting permission for registration of these electric vehicles. Financing is an issue for EVs that needs to be taken care of. And also to invest in clean energy infrastructure, because still the CO2 emission from electric vehicles will depend on how the electricity is generated. So in closing, what I would like to say is that MaaS has plenty to offer for everyone, especially if it is based on electric vehicles. It does good for the environment and for society at large. It may provide a challenge for SIAM members, frankly, because there is a fear that with MaaS getting adopted more and more, the vehicle demand will go down. The reason I don't think so, that the demand of mobility in India is far, far, far from being met. Very few, very small percentage of people own a vehicle. And therefore, what MaaS will do is not to reduce the demand for vehicle, but to make mobility more accessible and more affordable to the masses in India. There are multiple entrepreneurial opportunities that are coming in. The barrier to entry has come down significantly in some of the segments of MaaS vehicles, and that clearly will create new players, new icons, as we call it. It'll offer convenient, efficient, and accessible mobility solutions to the consumer. And for the economy, of course, it opens up EV export opportunities, a sort of a white space that we can create, and obviously reduce the oil import bill. And above all, I would say that helps the effort to improve urban air quality, which we all know is far, far, far from breathable, and reduce congestion in city centers. So I would like to close here and listen to Mr. Sinha on his views. But overall, I believe that this is a movement that is here to stay. Little setback that we have had because of COVID, but but that will be behind us very soon. And I think electric vehicles will make MaaS happen much more rapidly, and MaaS will make electric vehicles happen very rapidly. Thank you everyone for giving me this time, and I request Mr. Sinha to now give his views.
Thank you, Dr. Goenka. In fact, what you were speaking was like music to my ears. So most of the I was supposed to deliver special remarks. So the special portion you have already covered. So I am left with to share with you is only my remarks.
That's the advantage of being first, not the disadvantage of being last.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's so nice it is still better that it is coming from an industry captain, you see. That is what we always want you to speak. So thanks a lot. Thanks for inviting me on this occasion. Mobility is something most fundamental. The only probably depressing hour as of now is that we are talking of mobility in a virtual world. But yes, as all bad things pass away, and years ago, when William Faulkner, one of the Nobel laureates in American literature, he was in the thick of the Second World War. So he said that man will not only endure, he will prevail. So precisely it is the time that we are attempting to prevail upon. Mobility, as I said, and as all of us agree, that it is so basic to human requirement. It is not only for the socio-economic access to socio-economic opportunities, but it is also for, it's building up a social capital, building up bonds, linkages, bridges amongst us. It is for that mobility is most important. If it is not so, then how come in the 18th century, a French botanist named Jean Barré, she disguised herself as a man to travel on a ship, because that time sea voyage was not permissible to the ladies. In 1595, Spanish King Prince Philip, as he was suffering from gout, so what he did was that he asked all his experts that this particular disease cannot limit my movement. And that led to the invention and discovery of wheelchair. You see, what I'm trying to impress upon is that mobility is most fundamental, most basic. But yes, Dr. Goenka has rightly said that in September, on 7th of September 2018, our Honorable Prime Minister inaugurated that MOVE Summit, and he laid down the broad contours of mobility. That what mobility should be, what transformative mobility should be. And precisely 6 months after that, on 7th of March 2019, the National Mission on Transformative Mobility and Battery Storage was set up with its home at Niti Aayog, and with the steering committee formed by almost 7 line ministries, and the entire team is trying to take the mobility thing forward. I'm supposed to be its mission director. As far as EV is concerned, all of us are aware that this is going to be a big game changer. It is not a technology of the lab or technology for demonstration, or it is not even, you cannot calculate that what the technology readiness level of it is. It's already rolling, it's visible. The point is that how fast we adopt to it, so that we do not miss the opportunity of growing as a global leader in this area. That is most important. Now, as far as government efforts are concerned, let me assure you that we are working in the mission mode, and in the entire ecosystem, all the issues which are there, be it manufacturing, demand generation, R&D, fiscal incentives, regulatory frameworks, awareness, urban mining, in the entire spectrum, we have got visible, profound, absolutely, I would say, emphatic achievements, something to, a lot of efforts have gone into them. But yes, that does not stop us here. We do want that we should be further adding on to it so that everything takes on. Now, 2 specific, I would say, nudge that has been done from Niti Aayog is, one is that we have encouraged our technical institutions, precisely IITs, to come into the field and work out so that the cost of battery and the chemistry of alternate chemistries, they come into the picture. The cost comes down. The alternate chemistry, which are more acceptable, more economical, that is positioned. So let me share with you that as many as 7 IITs, IIT Chennai, Hyderabad, Mumbai, Guwahati, Kanpur, Delhi, and Ropar, they are working very, very seriously on this battery thing. And in December only, this IIT Kanpur, they have opened up a new department called Department of Sustainable Energy Engineering, with a very pronounced, very emphatic, very clear-cut module on battery. And they want to take it both as of now, it is MTech program. They want to take it as a kind of undergraduate as well as postdoctoral and doctoral programs. So that is what on the R&D front. As far as awareness is concerned, you must be watching that gradually this awareness thing is coming up, yes. And Delhi government going in for Switch Delhi or Switch Electric campaign, and Bureau of Energy Efficiency going in for Go Electric campaign. This is taking on, this is a long-term kind of nationwide program that they will run through, and that will develop that awareness level of the people, because that is most important. Until awareness is there, things won't come to that point of that traction won't be there. As far as policies are concerned, let me tell you that Dr. Goenka rightly said that we have done a lot. Thanks a lot. Thanks for the liberal words. But we are not stopping there. We are still investigating that what is it that is kind of deterring us from reaching that point of inflection from where there is a spontaneous acceptance and roll-on of this particular program. So what that distance, that difference, that has to be bridged with the help of policy supports. State governments are very keen on supporting, coming out with their own policies. And if I am not wrong, then today, I mean, as many as 11, that is the count, 11 state governments, they have notified their policies. I believe today Rajasthan government has notified their policy, and they held the investors meet also today. And for other 5 states, it is in draft stage and they will come out shortly. We at Niti Aayog, we have got a program. It is called EV Policy Accelerator Program. With international people on board, they are trying to help us out. And we have got a project that is called Lighthouse Project, in which we have identified 3 kinds of states which have already EV policy notified, but still that is not somehow getting implemented on the pace that is desired. And on the other hand, there is a state that does not have an EV policy, and there is a third one that is still in the stakeholder consultation. So as of now, we have identified 5 states. We have selected them after gaining their support, after they have evinced their interest. And these 5 states we are working through so that their EV policy gets perfectly in position, and that helps all the industry people, whether manufacturers or investors, to come out with to have clarity on what exactly is going around. You rightly said ACC, advanced chemistry cell, because battery is what the game is. It is all about battery. So the cost of EV 100 rupees, battery will be somewhere close to 35 to 50 rupees. So that is precisely the game is that. And that battery also, if you see, then the BMS, the battery management system, that cell will be somewhere close to 35, BMS will be 30-35, BMS will be somewhere close to 12 to 15, and last point will be lithium will be somewhere close to 1 or 1 rupee 60 paise kind of. That is the kind of economics and percentage is. So the game lies with the battery, how to reduce the price. Prices will continue to fall down. You are waiting for $100 for it to reach. Take my word, in 2 to 3 years time, this should be there. 9 years it has taken, 8 years it has taken precisely from 1165 to 156. And it will go down further, down and down. If not through lithium, then through alternate chemistries. But as far as affordability is concerned, it is bound to become affordable. You rightly raised the point that cost to finance is a major issue, especially with regard to the two-wheelers and three-wheelers, where almost 60 to 75, 80% of purchases are based on loans from banks. And as banks are little doubtful and chary of giving loans to these to two-wheelers and three-wheelers on the stipulated rates, that is why these people have to go to NBFCs, and then the kind of interest rate that they have to pay is somewhere close to 30% plus. So I mean, it doesn't become affordable. But yes, we are working. We are trying to think through that how a kind of first loss risk sharing instruments can be developed so that banks gain that confidence and money is available, loans are available at an affordable rate of interest. So affordability is one point. Range, of course, you have been working how to increase that, how to solve that range anxiety issue that you are working already. Now, as all of you are, majority of you are from the world of investment and manufacturing, I would say that as far as connecting it to MaaS is concerned, may I ask you a couple of things to do? Number one, can you on your own run up a program for awareness so that if somebody is not taking to EV, then it is a choice. It is not ignorance. That is one thing. Second is, can we think of a city and try to work out a plan to synergize different modes, which is in aspiration of mobility as a service? Can we think of one city and work out a program in that, work out a plan for that? The third is, of course, one that is being repeated with you each and every day. That is how to go in for manufacturing with 80% localization. And I'm precisely talking of EV, 80% localization and value capture. And for the investors, of course, the request will be that maybe you can think little beyond short-term gains. And precisely, that is how a civilization, a nation is brought back to glory and world leadership. I expect you all, that all of us, we work together so that India turns out to be a global manufacturer of world-class EV and EV components. And then that would be a real, that would be a real game changer. Thanks a lot. Thank you all.
Prashant, even though that was not planned, could I just take a couple of minutes more to react to some of what Mr. Sinha had said?
Yes, sir.
Do you have time for that?
Yes, please.
Okay, all right. Mr. Sinha, thank you very much. I think you have covered almost, like you said, music to your ears. What you said is music to our ears too. 2-3 things I just want to point out. First of all, in terms of what the government can do, and as I've said already, that there is a lot that the government has done already. But there are 2 areas, in my opinion, and the panelists may have some other thoughts that they'll come up with. 2 areas, in my opinion, that will be very helpful is to bring at least commercial use of electric vehicles under priority lending. Because right now, the financing cost for electric vehicles, 3-wheelers and small 4-wheelers is very high as 25%. And priority lending will allow that cost to come down in teens, and that will make a huge difference in EMI. And the second thing is to facilitate charging infrastructure development. And it's not so much about money. I think money investors can invest. It is about getting access to real estate to set up charging infrastructure. And if in some cities, at least in inner cities, if some space was made available for charging infra, then I think entrepreneurs can come forward and make that happen. The 3 points that you made towards the end, running a program of awareness, that I think something that we should do as an industry, and Siam could take a look at that and see how we can make that happen. The different modes, connecting different modes, that's one of the key enabler of MaaS. Once one gets out of the train, local train, how do you find a vehicle waiting for you outside, and so on. That will have to be a joint effort, because many of these transport modes are owned by state transport officers or state transport authorities. And somehow, if government and private can do a partnership in that to create that multimodal movement, that will really help. But I think it's a great idea that we should try and pursue. And finally, 80% localization of manufacturing of EVs is something that we absolutely have to do. I've said this many times, that if we let the opportunity of making EVs in India slip away from our hands, we have only ourselves to blame. And because this is a great opportunity for Make in India and even for exporting from India. Government is doing its bit. And as you have said, that many of us have to think long term and make investment in electric vehicle component localization, where the payback may not happen in 1 or 2 or 3 quarters. It may take 2 or 3 years, but it will happen for sure. So thank you for bringing that out, and we will come to you for help if you require any help in enabling that. Thank you again.
You are always welcome, Dr. Goenka, you and the entire team, all the people around. I have noted down 2 of your suggestions: priority lending and setting up, kind of supporting this charging infrastructure. We will definitely go ahead with it. Thank you.
It's my profound privilege, honor, and humble duty to thank Mr. Sinha, for if not he considers the special is reserved for Dr. Goenka, then his remarks have been motivational, inspirational, and very comprehensive. So thank you, sir, for highlighting the government side and government intent on making the mobility as a service. And Dr. Goenka, your statement assuring the government as well as giving and indicating the future path that mobility as a service is definitely going to offer multiple opportunity and allay all apprehensions that challenges will not be in terms of reduction in the number of vehicle sale, and it will open up new avenues of entrepreneurship. So thank you for your special remarks, Dr. Goenka, and presence of both of you have really made this entire session on lean mobility very meaningful. And without much ado, I think the next part of the session, which is a panel discussion with the leadership present from entire spectrum of lean mobility and making the mobility as a service. We invite Mr. Sumantro Vibhuti Borua, Autocar professional, to moderate this session. So over to you, Mr. Sumantro.
A very good afternoon to everyone, and thank you very much, Mr. Banerjee. A warm welcome to everyone to this part of the session on behalf of Autocar Professional Group. I hope everyone is doing well and staying safe and healthy. So indeed, it is my privilege and honor to moderate this session, this panel discussion, this session, which with the opening remarks of none other than an industry doyen like Dr. Goenka, followed by comments from the governance perspective from Mr. Sudhendra Sinha. Indeed, and I take a lot of, there are a lot of takeaways from me, for me, both as a journalist, I should the mobility industry, and also to do, it will also help me play my role as a moderator of this panel discussion. It's been about a little over 2 decades since I've started my career as a journalist. Only in the last few years, about maybe 3 or 4 years or so, that's when there's a special focus on mobility. Even though the automobile, right from its birth, is all about mobility. As Dr. Goenka also mentioned, it's only the focus of, there's a specific focus on mobility as an industry. Mobility, the word mobility is so often used in discussions now, which also reflects the need for the mobility to be seen as a different sector with a connection to, of course, automotive. And the MOVE Summit, which was hosted in 2018, is a reflection of how crucial it is as a theme for everyone, all stakeholders, government, society, industry, to focus upon. And so that even some OEMs, vehicle OEMs, have repositioned themselves as mobility solution providers, rather than calling themselves makers and sellers of, rather than calling themselves automobile manufacturers. So that is where, that is the kind of focus that mobility gets today, and rightfully so. And in this transition, in this evolution, electric mobility, electric vehicles will play an absolute key role, mutually supporting the growth of each other, as Dr. Goenka said. So now, and honor to introduce all the panelists of this discussion, this part of the session. A very well represented panel, I should say. So a quick introduction to each of them. Mr. Karthik Ganeshan, who is the Vice President and Business Head at Electric Mobility, Ashok Leyland, India's second largest commercial vehicle manufacturer and one in the vehicle space. And Mr. R.B. Santosh Kumar, Vice President and Head Government Engagement, South Asia at MasterCard. Mr. Karan Jain, co-founder and CEO of Rev. Mr. Goldie Srivastava, co-founder and CEO Smart E. Mr. Pawan Vaish, Central Operations India and South Asia of Uber. And last but not least, Mr. Amit Gupta, co-founder and CEO of Yulu, a micro-mobility service provider. Gentlemen, of you to this part of the session in this special panel discussion, and we look forward to a very interesting, insightful, and informative discussion with you all. And let me start off with Amit. Amit, since the topic is about mobility as a service, and Yulu has been a kind of a first mover in creating or offering, facilitating the mobility service at the for last mile mobility. So very briefly, what has been Yulu's experience so far, and how have you tweaked your kind of strategies in accordance with the evolution of the space?
Thank you, Sumantra. It's a pleasure to be here, and Dr. Goenka, it's a pleasure to see you. Thank you for chairing this session. Our journey started 3 years ago. The path was very clear. We had to look for several components while building this business. So, for example, there was no suitable vehicle for shared mobility in India, which is running on electric energy. The battery was not designed for climatic conditions. There was no charging station. Policy landscape was missing. And many a times when we were starting to go out and talking to people, while people were excited what we are doing, but at the same time, they all felt that we are talking something which will happen 10 years. But thankfully, due to a massive drive from the government of India, and also globally the innovations which are happening, we were able to create all of these components over the last 3 years. So today, Yulu has got probably the largest electric mobility fleet in the country with 10,000 electric two-wheelers, which are purpose-built for shared mobility perspective. We run our service in Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, and Ahmedabad. And we believe that while this number is very small, 10,000 is actually nothing, looking at our population and the opportunity, we have been able to create a template which can be scaled very massively if we get some more support from the ecosystem and from the government. And I think some of the points which were made were very relevant. If you really ask me, one of the biggest help we need is the financing part. I don't want to spend 20-25% interest rate. If it can come to favorable number, we can accelerate our growth rate by almost 5 to 10 times. So that's the impact we can make with whatever work we have done. So we are very excited about this journey. And we believe that the vision which is set up by our Honorable Prime Minister can be achieved with this collective work which we are doing right now.
Got it. And I mean, to all, many may be aware that there is at the in the of Bajaj Auto, or one of the leading two-wheeler makers in the world as well, who has invested and made some strategic investment in Yulu. We'll talk about that and how it could also facilitate how I will try and get that a large OEM's perspective also about how the micro-mobility space is likely to evolve from the experience that Amit has had so far. But before that, let me come to Karthik Ganesan. Zealand made it the electricity space. The government's focus, as far as electric mobility is concerned, is prioritizing public transportation, and in a scenario where their mobility as a service is projected to grow at a rapid pace. Okay, never mind the temporary impact of the COVID pandemic, but can you tell us how do you expect this space to progress here on? And within that, what role do you think commercial vehicle makers like Ashok Leyland will play?
Thank you, Sumantra, for the question. Brilliant question, and a good time to ask about the recovery of the mobility in the country, because I think now, and I have started traveling across the country, and I really see things going back to normal. In the next couple of months, I believe mobility will come back to full normalcy with the COVID vaccine being universally available. So we are really gearing up to come back into the market, and we're expecting public transport to come back in a big way. There will be a modal shift for some more years where personal usage will be given a little bit more priority. But then the sheer cost impact, the sheer convenience impact is going to come around to push up a lot more last mile connectivity as a mix between public transport and last mile connectivity. And electric mobility is here to stay. With your permission, Sumandra, I will, since the COVID has been happening, we've gone to the drawing board as Ashok Leyland. And we've put together an initiative to address many of the concerns around financing, about technology uncertainty, etc., that the esteemed panelists have spoken about. And we've now decided to launch a brand new company which is EV specific in the country as well as internationally. With your permission, can I put up a slide which just talks about what we plan to do?
Yeah, you please. I mean, brief, quick.
Very, very brief. Yeah.
Yes.
So you should be able to see my screen now.
Yes, please.
Yes. So very quickly introducing what we've done is we have put together the Ashok Leyland EV business and our international business out of TER, and brought together a company called Switch Mobility. This is the first time we're talking about it publicly in a large forum. But more importantly, we're looking at buses, and we're looking at last mile connectivity vehicles. And then I'll come to the point of what you spoke about, mobility as a service. So we've decided that as an OEM, we need to be looking at MaaS more actively, and we are going to be committing significant capital and corporate interest into creating a MaaS platform company, which will aggregate capital, which will aggregate resources, which will aggregate capabilities, and really expand the presence in the market for e-mobility through our MaaS operations. And we are looking at multiple innovative business models. We spoke about the challenges around financing. We spoke about the challenges around availability of charging infrastructure. We believe the next 5 years is a growth phase. And those who come forward and help accelerate this space will take the pie in the next 5 years after that, which is 25 and onwards. And India is ripe for the picking. The government support is forthcoming. There are a few areas of support which I'll talk about, but this is what our company has been working on during the COVID crisis. And I'm very proud to announce that this is something that we'd like to take forward in a big way. I'll stop sharing now. Specifically on areas of support, considering that we are going to be putting in large amounts of investment in a pure play MaaS company which focuses on commercial mobility for buses and for light commercial vehicles, priority sector lending will become very, very important. Structured product loans to be focused by our banks should become very, very important. And I'm sure many other large companies will also come into this space to set up MaaS, e-MaaS companies. And the active participation of commercial capital is absolutely essential without having the hesitation, because now when large companies back it, it's going to be backed by the technology guarantees and promises which come with these sort of initiatives. So these are the two very basic requests that I have, because for the kind of capital we need commercial capital to be actively pumped into these platform companies. With that, I'll hand it back. Okay, thanks.
That's a good snapshot of what Ashok Leyland plans to do. And with the recent reorganization of Optare, it's quite clear that there's a concerted effort now. And as I said, this next 5 years will see. In fact, at the beginning of this week, we had a 2-day EV forum hosted by Autocar professionals, wherein more or less the entire consensus was that, including from Mr. Mahesh Babu, who is the chairman of Science Electric Mobility Committee, is that this could be the start of the major growth of electric mobility, and that's good to know. But at the same time, one of the key megatrends, global megatrends, along with electrification, that will all play a very, very key role on how the MaaS as an industry progresses. So let me get in the perspective of Uber from Mr. Pawan Vaish, Head Central Operations India and South Asia at Uber, because Uber has been a kind of key player and a first mover in this space, and has made has brought in this disruption and been very well taken. But at the same time, because of the unfortunate pandemic, Uber is one of the players which has taken a huge knock. On the Pawan Vaish, what I would like to understand from you is, what is the current status of the whole shared mobility industry? How soon do you think players like Uber will come back to the pre-COVID operation levels, performance levels, and how does the road ahead look like? Because through some reports, and there's some very impressive projections of MaaS industry's growth. Just to cite one of them, which says that between 2019 and 2027, the industry is expected to clock a CAGR of 23% or so to reach a total size of about $280 billion. That's a huge figure. So how do you see this, the role of shared mobility in this? Mr. Vaish, are you there?
Yeah, Sumantra, can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
So our view is that we see ourselves as a platform, and there is a partnership between, public mobility. So whether it is buses, it is the metro, and it is private mobility, shared mobility. So to give you a classic example, we have integrated folks like the Delhi Metro, the Hyderabad Metro into our network. So when you open the app, you're able to make a choice, and you can also see all the routes, real time, what is the status. And I think this is only going to be more and more. On the other side of this, you see us partnering with folks like Yulu, where their bikes are available and their services available on the Uber platform. So when you open the Uber app, it should be your go-to point to make choices basis what you want, right? And in the ideal state, we should be able to integrate this end-to-end and ticketing across multimodal. So you might take a Yulu bike from your home to the train station, from there take a metro, and on the other side, you might take a e-rickshaw to your office, and you have this ticketed end to end. So we have all the capability there. That is kind of the vision, and in various parts of the world we have done this, including some very interesting work that we have done in India. And we are very optimistic around electric. We are committed by 2040 the entire network is going to be emissionless, and by end of 2021 we expect to have at least 3,000 vehicles on the platform here in India, and are collaborating and giving encouragement to folks who bring their fleet, because we are a platform, we don't actually manufacture stuff. In terms of growth, we continue to be very, very bullish, right? We are seeing increased use cases, increased penetration, and week on week, we are clearly seeing, business ramping up. You're correct. During the lockdown, obviously, shared mobility had to shut down, and then subsequently there has been recovery. And what we are finding is the recovery is led by the two-wheeler and three-wheeler segments, right? In many cities, the three-wheeler segment has actually reached pre-COVID levels, as an example, right? So very, very encouraging. And as Dr. Goenka said, we continue to be very optimistic. We think that this is going to come back. The vaccines are rolling out. Case numbers are continuing to fall, and there will be a little bit of blip in this as COVID kind of stabilizes. But in the medium term, I think this is going to be a very, very strong industry, and we are well positioned to integrate various elements of that into the network to provide a comprehensive offering to the user, so they don't have to worry about making individual choices.
Okay, good to know that you have a positive outlook on the recovery, and at least in some segments like the three-wheelers, it's already in the pre-COVID levels. And good to see the collaborative approach that you're taking with other mobility service providers. So I'm sure the good times will come back at the earliest as the vaccination drives continue. But here, let me get in Mr. Goldeep Srivastava of Smarty. Mr. Srivastava, your initial experience ever since you floated Smarty, and how has been the offtake or the adoption of your services in the markets you operate in? And in terms of the COVID impact, we're talking about the impact of COVID on shared mobility in your segment. How is it now, and what is the kind of growth outlook that you have? Srivastava, we can't
hear. It's on mute.
Apologies. The perils of being on virtual sessions. Yeah, so thank you so much, Sumantra, for the question, and thank you, Siam and CII, for the opportunity. Honored to be sharing the space with Dr. Goenka and colleagues and friends from the industry. At Smarty, our journey began in 2014. We are essentially India's first electric mobility services company. We started our services about 7 years ago, and about 70 million rides later, all delivered through electric three-wheelers, working with esteemed partners like Mahindra and Kinetic and few others. I think we've covered quite a bit of a distance today. If you look at our presence across 10 cities, with a network of more than 60 EV charging stations and thousands of vehicles, I think we couldn't be more proud of what we have achieved. Obviously COVID has had its impact, right? So we were at an all-time high in February of 2020 when COVID hit. The good thing for us was that we were also had a diversification strategy in place. I mean, not because of COVID, but despite of COVID, we had a strategy in place, and we quickly diversified into goods mobility, and which is what, as a company, kind of helped balance out our portfolio over the subsequent 12 months. So when I look at January of 2021, which is exactly 12 months later than COVID impacted, we've recovered, to higher than revenue levels as it was in the pre-COVID era, right? So as a company, we are back to recording revenues that were higher than pre-COVID era, much stronger performance, much leaner organization. The mobility side of the business, which is to be specific in terms of the people mobility side of the business, is at around between 40 to 50% recovery is what we've seen so far, which in a sense mirrors the recovery that mass rapid transport systems like Delhi Metro are seeing. So if you talk to Delhi Metro, for example, of which Smarty is a long-term partner, they will tell you that their ridership has recovered to about 40 to 45%. And so our ridership sort of very closely mimics that recovery. Similarly in other cities as well. I heard a comment earlier about, I believe it's from Karthik, about personal mobility taking a preference. I have a different take on it. I mean, and especially the category that Smarty caters to, right? I mean, we cater to the bottom 70% of Indian pyramid. Which is this bottom 70%? This is, and I'm a street food lover and I go out even in these current days. I mean, not throwing caution to the wind, but I still do. The markets are crowded. People are still eating their pani puris, jostling for space, right? The shopping corridors are crowded in malls, and the traffic jams are as bad as they could get. I'm talking of literally as of yesterday. And the night markets are flourishing and the vegetable vendors are back to hawking their wares. So, despite the top 30%, which is the upwardly mobile people like you and me who can afford to work from home, stay at home, exercise a lot of caution, the bottom 70%, the audience that we cater to, I mean, I see them already out there. And that's exactly what I hear from our mass rapid transport partners. And they're saying that, look, it's a capacity constraint that Metro has put in to commuters. It's not that commuters are not ready to travel. The commuters are ready and raring to travel. And you saw the beautiful picture that got tweeted a few days ago about this gentleman touching the pedestal of Mumbai suburban railways, right? And the traffic jams being back. So people are raring to go. The demand's already there. I don't believe whatever is being held up is because the government has still sort of reined in the controls. So for us, as soon as suburban train systems, mass rapid transport systems like Delhi Metro, bus systems, state transport buses, they allow them to run at full capacity. For players like us, the demand will come rolling back. I mean, I do not believe there's going to be any major impact as far as the demand is concerned. We expect next 3 months with a combination of vaccine and the cases declining. The next 3 months is what it should take to normalize to about 75 to 80% of pre-COVID levels, and very, very confident of that.
Okay. That's on a very positive note. And yes, indeed, people are raring to go, and so does the growth of new ownership models like subscription. So let me get in subscription as well as self-drive rental services. These could be also big beneficiaries as people look for more mobility solutions and get more mobile. So let me get in Karan Jain, who is the co-founder and CEO of Rev, which also has an alliance with Hyundai for vehicle subscription business. So Karan, tell us in terms of the demand for mobility now, like if I can say post-COVID, how has it been? And as Mr. Srivastava mentioned, people are raring to go. Is that also reflected on your businesses of self-drive rental as well as subscription? Karan. Karan. Okay, I think he hasn't been able to. But hopefully, let's see. I think he's not joined yet.
He's not there, yeah.
Yeah. All right, but let me get in another perspective from MasterCard. Mr. Santosh Kumar, your outlook on from where you are, how does the mass industry look like, and the evolution of this industry in India and in the near to midterm?
Thanks, Sumantra. Thanks for this. So I'll give you a perspective from MasterCard and from the payment industry point of view. So for us, this mass mobility as a service is actually a model where it's a single platform that digitally the consumer do carry out a multimodal form of travel. So like we have been discussing, for a simple journey, a traveler will have to plan. He may take a bike, he may take a shared car, then he may take a train. He may get down from the train and again have to take a shared car. So this involves this multi-stage journey is quite complicated. And for each stage, he has to make a payment. Sometimes he has to make a payment in advance. And there are stages where he has to show a proof of the advance that is paid. So it's a little complicated. And scheduling, waiting, and all can be, kind of some kind of disruptions. So what we are working on is having a one single payment on a smartphone enabled app that a person can get to reach his destination on a multiple mode of transportation. So this single payment is routed to all the appropriate parties to cover their fares, the fees involved in the trip. So this technology will connect vehicles, public transit, and infrastructure to offer flexible and safe travel. So what we have done, we have already worked with partners, and in UK we have already launched this. We have a partner called Vocalink with whom we are working, and with some of the banks we have a vision across the globe. So we have smart 60 cities already, and in India also we are planning to get into the smart city space. One very important point Dr. Goenka mentioned, that our focus should not remain only on urban centers. Rural is also something that we'll have to touch on as part of the MaaS vision. So that's something that we are planning on. That's something that we are working on. We are already in discussion with partners for this, because it requires a lot of partners to work together to ensure a very smooth, hassle-free experience for the passenger. So it's one-click payment, and he can complete and reach his destination.
And that will play a very strong facilitator's role as things progress. Pawan, I would like to get, since Dr. Goenka mentioned, and now even Mr. Santosh mentioned about that mobility should not be mobility as a service should not be limited only to the urban centers, and there is demand in semi-urban stroke, semi-rural areas. From a Uber's perspective, what has been your experience? You have expanded into tier 2 and in some regions tier 3 cities also. Do you see a more appetite or more demand for your shared mobility services, for example, not necessarily in the same nature or same shape and size like we have in Mumbai, maybe in a different format also?
So, Sumantra, what we find is that depending on the region and depending on the city, the nature of mobility requirements do vary. So when you are in the larger cities, it is more common, for example, for car usage. Right? But as we go to tier 2, tier 3 cities, we find that auto is much more common, right? Auto and two-wheeler, and car is used as an occasion. So if you're going for a wedding or you're going for dinner and you want to kind of step up your, mobility option, then you will choose a car. But the dominant mode might be something different. So what we'll end up doing is that as we expand into different cities, we study that what are the preferences that users have in that city, and then tailor our solution to that. So it is not like a one size fits all. And certainly we have not gone to rural. We've certainly gone to tier 3 cities, but not rural. And I think when you get to rural, two-wheelers will also be a very, very important, mode of transport there. But frankly, that remains an unexplored area so far for Uber. We've certainly expanded to tier 2, tier 3 cities, and the choices are different. And Dr. Pavan Goenka certainly might have a view on their experience and insight.
Dr. Goenka, would like to share your
I can come in. I can come in, and if you give me an opportunity, I would also like to do part of your job. So let me respond to Pawan. I absolutely agree, Pawan, that the requirements are very different. And in rural, as you know, that the shared mobility is much more prevalent than in urban, but totally unorganized, right? And sometimes not following the constraints that are put on how much one can load a vehicle for and all that. But I think what needs to be done, we had once studied a midtown, I won't name it right now, but a midtown, where we found that the opportunity was humongous of connect population, not just within the town, but also towns in 15-20 kilometer radius. But it's not something that a company like Mahindra can do because we don't have the wherewithal of what an Uber would have. So I'll be happy to talk to you offline and kind of compare notes. But I think you cannot go in tier 3 cities right now, but sort of the towns below what we call non-metro, sort of urban, rural, or whatever, 5 lakh, 3 lakh, 2 lakh population kind of town. I think there's a very big opportunity.
And I think the point that you're raising is very valid. What we clearly find is that as our network expands, the travel between cities increases, what we call intercity travel. Right. You know, Delhi to Meerut, Delhi to Muzaffarnagar, Saharanpur, whatever, right? It's just examples. So the bigger the network, I think that certainly is helpful.
Could I ask a few questions, Sumantra? Do we have time?
Go ahead, sir.
Okay, all right.
We have.
Have we lost him or?
Yeah, I think we've temporarily lost him. Maybe Sumantra, you want to carry on?
Yeah, there's a disruption in that. But before till Dr. Goenka comes back, let me ask a question to Amit. Amit, Yulu has also attracted the interest and investment from a major a major like Bajaj Auto. Now, this investment is more than welcome, I'm sure, for Yulu, but from a OEM's perspective, it's a strategic investment. So how does what has been your experience, and how does say a Bajaj Auto look at Yulu, or through Yulu, what does it like to gain or learn and prepare for the opportunities that are emerging and will come in the mobility as a service space?
So if I look at the word from Yulu's lens, we were very clear that ultimately we may talk about that this is a technology powered vehicle which is used by the end consumer. And for us to be delighting the customer, the vehicle has to be top notch. So we were very clear from beginning that we need to create a vehicle which is suitable for Indian needs and also which can work in the shared mobility environment. We will have to create something from ground up. You cannot go and buy, you cannot just say that, hey, you make this for me. So we needed a vision partner to make this revolutionary product along with us. And that's where we found a very good vision alignment with Mr. Rajiv Bajaj and Bajaj Limited. Now let's look at the from their lens. We all know that mobility in this decade is going to be electric, it's going to be shared, smart and small. And Bajaj, from their perspective, they understand the art of making two-wheeler, they understand the Indian market reasonably well. But mobility is actually a new thing. They understand how to make a great two-wheeler. But what is this software stack? How to run it? Mobility in a service mode? All of that thing, that was all alien thing for them. And that's where, when we spoke, there was a good match from the both parties. So what is an outstanding partner for manufacturing R&D. And what they get Yulu is someone who understands mobility, building network, working on the policy, leveraging AI and ML, all of that operational component in our business.
Okay, got it. And as a user of Yulu also, I've used times. I can say that I mean, players like Yulu will really facilitate the growth of mobility as a service, and also encourage people to be more mobile in the places they operate in. Dr. Goenka, good to have you back. Please go ahead with your question.
Did you say something, Sumitra?
Yes, you have got disconnected. Now, good to have you back. Please go ahead. If you're...
I don't know. Did I get disconnected at the very beginning or in the middle? I didn't realize.
Oh no, you got disconnected before you could ask, we could hear the question. So you can go ahead with the question again.
Okay, right. So I had started off by saying that this is a very good panel that you put together and covers the complete range of MaaS. And I would love to spend separate time with them for an hour or so to understand all the nuances. But just a few questions, not directed at anyone specific. Want to understand from your viewpoint, from the people who are providing service, is there commercial viability today for using electric vehicle in place of an ICE engine vehicle? What is anybody may, I mean, you may not want to share that, but if you want to, that will help. Or how far are we from commercial viability? That's first question. I have 2 or 3.
Well, I'll jump in there, Dr. Goenka. On the 3-wheeler side, the answer, as you would well know it, answer is absolutely yes. Both from a capex perspective, thanks to a lot of the good work that Mahindra Electric has done and Mahesh and team have done, the capital acquisition cost itself of an electric 3-wheeler is as competitive as it gets compared to auto rickshaw. Obviously, if you look at the L3s, which is the low-speed 3-wheelers, they are even more cheaper. So from a capital acquisition, the price parity is already there. Operating economics is about 1/5 of what it is for ICE engine. For diesel vehicle, you spend about 2.5 rupees or 3 rupees a kilometer. Further going up now, because thanks to the petrol and diesel prices rise, electric is about 50 paise a kilometer. So for 3-wheelers, and that's the space that we feel lucky to be in. The price parity is absolutely there. So the business case is there. The issue really is, how do we rapidly build out the infrastructure? How do we organize that whole industry? Because it's not just about electrifying that industry, it's also about organizing that whole industry so that we can drive the right type of behavior, user behavior, right? Because electric vehicles require a different degree of tender love and care, if you wish, right? To be managed, to be charged and taken care of. So I think if we can drive that, I think we have a winning category for sure amongst all other vehicle form factors. So that's just 2 cents from my end.
What about 4-wheelers?
Yeah, I can take that, Dr. Goenka. So I'll come at it from commercial 4-wheelers and buses. No, the answer is we are not there without subsidy yet, very clearly. Because of the load that we need to carry, because of the range expectations that are placed upon 4-wheelers today, even if you take a ton payload and maybe 200 kilometers per charge for a bus, 200 kilometers per day for a bus, the kind of batteries that get loaded are significantly higher than the 3-wheelers, for example. I agree that 3-wheelers are already there. 2-wheelers even more so. I believe even more so than 3-wheelers, 2-wheelers are already there. And that's why you see those volumes and those industries expanding. But with MaaS and with subsidy, at least to a certain extent on 4-wheeler light commercial vehicle, there is a real business case and there is a real customer need also. You might have heard from some of your customers yourself that when they look beyond 3-wheelers, when they look at more of hub-to-hub transport, when they look at heavier payloads to be delivered, and when they look at higher gradients, higher speeds, etc., they are looking forward to 4-wheelers, and that is the next wave I believe is going to come. And many of us are getting prepared, including us. But that will be a pure MaaS play. You will not be able to sell the vehicles like you've managed, because in Mahindra, I think you hit the right price point. It's really moving the industry forward, but it will be on a MaaS basis going forward. 4-wheelers. Yeah.
And Pawan, for shared mobility for your business, of a sedan, and what range would make you look at electric sedans or hatchbacks a lot more seriously?
So Dr. Goenka, as you know, we have a partnership with Lithium. So we do have some experience now operating this, and we have got other folks on the platform. Our experience so far has been that 4-wheelers are not there just as yet, because you have to be running them 18-20 hours. So, maybe multiple employee shifts, etc., and companies which are willing to pay a premium in order to get it to even break even. So I think it is some distance away. So that is the car side of the story. I think to give you an example of, Swift Desire is the most popular model as far as ICE engine car is concerned in the sedan category, that will run you about what, 7 lakhs of rupees, right? So right now I think there is some distance there. I think the other thing is that electric cars are supposed to last a lot longer, but no one has seen that, right? So there is a trust deficit over here. If you say something is going to last you 8 years, 9 years, we only see the ICE experience, which is like in 4 years or so, at least from the cab category, 4 to 5 years, the car is not usable because of the mileage which has been given. So that's on the car side. On the three-wheeler side, I think it is prime time. This is the time we should, it should be expanding, but I think it's early days, but a lot of potential. We are very excited about it. On two-wheelers, I think there are nuances over here. Are you using it for delivery? So whether it is food tech or whatever, in which case you don't have a heavy second passenger. But the moment you have a second passenger, performance slows down, speed slows down. I think it is catching up, and I think it'll get there fairly soon. But probably we are at the cusp of that. It's still not fully there. And if you really want something which has decent performance, let's say 40 kilometers per hour kind of peak speed, then the cost is a little higher than we probably can have affordability. And most people don't buy two-wheelers only to do delivery or to, take passengers along. It's also their personal vehicle. So I think you have to win that. The moment it starts selling as a personal vehicle, then automatically I think it will start showing up on shared mobility. So that's our experience. And e-rickshaws, of course, Smarty is, they've had a lot of experience. We also have done pilots. That is, of course, the widest electric category which is out there right now.
Thank you, Pawan. Back to you, Sumantra. Just one comment to Pawan that we have many vehicles that have kilometers and few that have crossed 2 lakh kilometers. We'll share that detail with you.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Goenka. You're more than welcome to come back if you have any further questions. But before I go to the panelists on the same subject, your experience with the Glide, because Glide has been an all-electric shared mobility service. Initial experiences, pre-COVID, how was it, and where do you think it could go?
Sorry, what are you asking?
Yes, sir. I was asking you, staying on the same topic, how has been Mahindra's experience with Glide, the all-electric shared mobility service? Mm-hmm. I understand that before it could gain traction, the COVID impacted, but yeah. So
I think Glide was a victim of COVID. We were picking up quite well, and as you know, Glide model is about transporting people from home to their workplace and back. Yeah. That's the primary thing, and doing it in a more personalized form rather than a shared mobility form. Yes. And we created partitions and all that. But now that people are working from home, the need of transporting people from home to work has become much lesser. And the Glide had a setback because of that. We are revisiting the model and are working on different sort of business model. But as I had mentioned at that time, the Glide was never meant to be competing with the service providers. Glide was meant to be demonstrating to service providers electric vehicles are commercially viable. So nobody on this panel should see Glide as a competition to them. Our primary objective is to provide vehicles and not to provide service. This is up to you.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Goenka. Pawan, on staying with the topic of electric vehicles, you mentioned about, if I remember correctly, about a fleet of 3,000 electric vehicles in 2021.
That's right.
Where does that figure stand currently? The fleet size stand currently.
I don't have it on my fingerprint, Sumantra, so I'm a bit stumped but I could obviously.
Okay.
Sure. Certainly progressing, well towards that number. But weighted more towards the two-wheeler, three-wheeler category than the cars category. Which is something I explained, right? I think that's not a surprise.
Right. Correct. And Karthik, let me come. Now with this reorganization of Ashok Leyland's electric mobility business under one umbrella called Switch, which is again carved out of your Optare business. Tell us, are there any kind of learnings, let's say, from Optare's home market of UK? Because Transport for London has been cited as an example on many discussions related to mobility, mobility industry. So are there any kind of learnings from there which could be not only kind of implemented for developing solutions in terms of products, but also designing services which at least some Indian cities could adopt?
No, absolutely, and that was one of the reasons why we had joined forces with the British division. So they actually make one of the most lightweight products and optimize the size of the battery, optimize the total dead load available. One thing that we have learned is we are in the first phase of electric mobility, where at least in the commercial space, in the four-wheeler space, people have electrified existing platforms. For electric mobility to really take off, you need a completely connected, lightweight, uh, the product designed from ground up to suit the particular needs of MaaS, of shared mobility, etc. So some of the goals that we have put together for Switch is around that, like a completely ground up, platforms for buses, for commercial vehicles, pod type transports, etc. are being envisioned today. It's all extremely futuristic, but extremely relevant, because we've realized there is a natural limit for how much you can extract out of an electrified diesel vehicle, and you really need to bring those, and that's a learning that we've taken. Of course, from the TfL perspective, there is a lot of learnings around how they contract out or tender out the business to their operators. They do routes and schedules for buses. We are still not there yet in India. We're still tendering for buses, and that is a big challenge because you're not able to optimize. You're not able to optimize the batteries to the routes, etc. So that is the next step. So this whole electric mobility business is going to become iterative. Battery sizing with respect to route, and then feedback from the route going back into the BMS, and then the battery is becoming more efficient. This whole cyclical loop is also envisioned as we go into the future. So extremely high-tech stuff can be expected soon.
So you're talking about exclusive electric bus platforms for kind of product solutions. Are they meant for the Indian market also? Do you see the adoption of these concepts, especially pod-like solutions for Indian market? And if yes, how soon do you think
Well, that will be a two-step process.
Here?
There is a two-step process to get there, but e-commerce will drive the change. To be very frank, e-commerce has taken over. One for very positive outcome for the e-commerce guys, of course, is that their business has just grown 5-fold, 6-fold, and it's staying there. People have gotten used to that convenience. That means that last mile deliveries are definitely going to continue to grow in a very rapid pace, and they've committed to electrify. Now, across the world, if you see the benchmarks, every one of the e-commerce players, including Amazon, have asked for bespoke last mile delivery sort of boxes or pods, as you could call it. It's not yet come to India because the scale is building, but at the rate at which India is going, they're going to have the same demands as they come here also. And that's going to drive the sort of new age formats for electric vehicles. Last mile passenger transport will also pick up, but we need heavy amounts of deregulation in our country for that to really pick up. We are extremely regulated, and it's difficult to bring those formats in right now.
Right. Quick view from Mr. Srivastava and Amit. This last mile stroke first mile connectivity, the solution providers like you all will really play a very key role in terms of getting people in this whole evolution of the mobility as a service. So ever since you started, have you seen the change in the profile of users, or they maybe the average riding distances or anything of this kind, which indicates that yes, it's evolving not only in terms of numbers but in terms of profile, in terms of usage also. Yeah.
So should I go first?
Please.
Yeah, at least in the case of Yulu, people who were going for their work commute, and we were providing first mile, last mile. After Corona, many of these guys, as you know, that they have been from home, and that usage has been taken by student community. So lot of college kids who are now going for their classes. So that use actually has come up in a big manner. We're also seeing that we were not catering to blue collar and grey collar employees. So people who work in factories and traditional industries, we were earlier not catering to them, but now they have started using our services. And people earlier who were using auto rickshaws and buses and even taxis, they started using YOLO even for the long distance. So earlier our average distance used to be 3 kilometers in Bangalore. Now that average distance moved close to 4.2 to 4.3 kilometers. And this is coming primarily people are seeing the other formats which primarily were suitable for the long distance. And only thing that has been driving this behavior change, that when they are using YOLO service, they are alone, there is no co-passenger or driver, and it is all open air. So micro-mobility services globally, they all have tailwind due to Corona, and they have emerged to be the safest way for people to move within the city. And that goodness has come to us as well.
Okay. Mr. Srivastava, any such anecdotes from your end?
Yeah, so for Smarty, as a service whose average fare per ride has been 10 rupees, I mean, we have always catered to the mass market. As I mentioned, it's really the bottom 70% of the pyramid that we have historically catered to because of our low commute pricing. So we've seen pretty much the entire user group, using our vehicles. But there are two categories of user groups that we've seen with emergence of a network, taking more and more to our service. One is women commuters, right? Earlier, you would generally see women would be fairly hesitant in taking, a shared, sort of rickshaw or a shared auto, right? Because of safety and compliance issue. And with Smarty's services, we see actually a very, very large number of women commuters preferring this service. The second are the elderly citizens, right, who prefer not to haggle. They want a safe and reliable ride. So we've seen these two categories of commuter base becoming a big loyal customer base of Smarty. But other than that, I mean, we've been a mass mover and we continue to be that, both pre and post COVID.
Okay. Good to see the emergence of new users. Before we end, Dr. Goenka, any last questions from your side?
Well, I can have lots of questions, but it is. So maybe you should wrap up, and I'll connect with some of the panelists separately. But very, very encouraged to hear what everybody had to say. And my belief that electric vehicles in shared mobility and last mile connectivity, both for load and passenger, is just ready to take off now. And with little bit of push from everyone, all the stakeholders, the OEMs, the service providers, the consumers, and the government. I think we are in for a very, very big push towards electric vehicles, and I think the market will surprise us. There are a lot of pundits who talk about 2%, 3% penetration in the next 4 or 5 years. I would love to have this panel discussion 5 years from now, and I think everybody will be smiling with the kind of penetration that we have seen and the way MaaS has taken off. So I won't ask any more questions. I'll do it separately.
Indeed, Dr. Goenka right said, and at an inflection point, both electric vehicles as well as mobility as a service all set to grow further, and which is quite clear from the deliberations of the panel discussion today, and also I can say for basis my interaction with other industry leaders, and what also the government's role. In fact, as the Delhi government minister who was there in our EV forum earlier this week also mentioned about trying to change upon in his earlier in his opening remarks of the session. Changing a mindset will also really play a key role in the adoption or larger adoption of electric vehicles, which again will facilitate the growth of mobility as a service. So on that note, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for this wonderful session. A round of applause to the organizers, CII, IM, and the partners, ACMA, and all involved parties to this Mobility Show 2021. Wishing everyone all the very best on behalf of Autocar Professional. I'm Sumantra Barua. Thank you very much and best wishes to all. And back to you, Mr. Banerjee.
Thank you. Thank you very much for all the speakers, panelists, and the participants for being part of this very interesting, informative session. And with this, the session 3 of Future Mobility Summit 2021 comes to end. Thank you very much.
Thank you.